following with a town hall with the nonprofits that deal with the arts and culture, as well as other associated issues. And it's a pleasure to have you with us, whether you are following us live through the wonderful technology of Zoom, or whether you are watching through YouTube or on Castanet or Facebook. Thank you for joining us for this great opportunity to hear some of the leaders in our community that deal with arts and culture and other nonprofit related associations. So you don't want to listen to me, and that's great. I'll just jump right in and introduce our panelists for today. They're each going to take a minute or two to introduce themselves and their organizations and maybe a key issue that they're dealing with. And then we'll follow through with your questions that you sent to us ahead of time. Or you can submit questions live through the Zoom Q&A feature. I will get those and I can ask them as well. Or if you are on Facebook, you can put a comment in there. We'll try to find it and then transcribe it over to the Q&A on Zoom for you, and then ask that question as well. So without any further ado, Ellen from KCR, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little introduction to what we're going to do today.
Absolutely, thanks. And thanks so much again for hosting us, Norm. We really appreciate it. I just wanted to start, not to talk about KCR, but to talk a bit about the sector. I just wanted to give you a bit of a picture about the not-for-profit and the charitable sector. I just believe that many people don't realize just how big and important the sector is to Canada. The not-for-profit charitable sector is over 8% of our gross domestic product. So if you actually take the retail sales, accommodation, and food services and put it together, the not-for-profit sector is actually larger than that. We contribute approximately about $250 billion to the Canadian economy, and we hire, about 2.4 million Canadians. Really, we're here today to talk a bit about COVID and the impact it has had on our sector. The not-for-profit organizations are largely funded through a combination of different grants, fundraising, and earned revenue. And this pandemic has really impacted each one of those three significantly. When we're talking about organizations having to cancel events, having to close facilities, having to refund ticket sales, maybe they're unable to run camps for children. All of those things reduce the earned revenue and severely affect the financial challenges for the organization. We're looking at some of the stats. We can say that 74% of BC's not-for-profit sector have reported a reduction in revenue. A provincial survey put out by Vantage Point suggests that 1 in 5 not-for-profits may need to close their doors as a direct result of COVID. If you're looking at United Nations, they're actually estimating 1 in 9 museums are going to fold across the world, again, because of the effects of this pandemic. And this is where we're not finished yet. I know we're in phase 2 right now, but imagine Canada goes further to say that 45% of the sector expects things to get even worse in the next 3 months. So the people that you see on the screen today, these are all our true leaders in the sector of arts, culture, sports, community organizations that are key to improving our quality of life, to making our communities more attractive and livable, and for offering opportunities to kids and families. They are critical organizations providing essential services for our day-to-day lives. And we are honored to have them agree to be guests today. And I look forward to learning from each one of them. Thanks, Norm.
No problem. Thanks, Ellen, for giving us that overview. That's great. So without any further ado, Linda Digby, if you would like to please unmute from the Colonialism Society and tell us a little bit about your organization, please.
Thank you very much. I would love to do that. I think of museums as keepers of community memory, and one of the things that we strive to do is connect generations through time. I think that when we are living a moment of history, as we are now, museums have a role in reminding us of forces that are bigger than ourselves. And maybe by providing some historical perspective, we have a way of providing some comfort and some sense of connection at a time when we're feeling really isolated. Museums and galleries also can serve as places of inspiration and entertainment and solace at a time. And I certainly have noticed around the globe a lot of people turning to the cultures and the arts and culture for comfort and inspiration during this. We hope together to really fire the community, the civic imagination. So Kelowna Museum Society, some of you may know us through different parts of what we do. Right now I'm sitting in the Orchard Gallery at the Laurel Packing House. We also operate the Okanagan Military Museum, and we operate the Okanagan Heritage Museum, the Kelowna Public Archives, the Conservation Lab, Central Okanagan Sports Hall of Fame. All of these things together that we do are to preserve and present history. So the creative disruption of COVID-19 caused us to completely pivot, and completely, it seems overnight, we had to disrupt our creative practice and reimagine how to deliver these services at the time of community need. So just a couple things I'd love to mention. A big focus on digital content, something that we were not our happy place, but we've learned to grab tools we didn't even know existed 3 months ago and to use them for virtual field programs. For example, we're giving 5 programs a day to children in school children through virtual media like this one, and also live programming for families to help give them something to talk about around the table. We've initiated a community collecting program for COVID-19, inviting people, including all of you who are listening right now, to send your memories, your objects and your stories and your pictures about this part of history that's currently being made. And all that is just an example of the kind of pivot we've had to do. And when I look around my colleagues in the sector, like the Kelowna Art Gallery, another incredible organization, I've seen some new digital initiatives. I know all of us are struggling a bit with revenues, and it's been exhausting, but I feel this creative disruption is ultimately going to lead to some very interesting changes in the work that we do.
Thank you, Linda. Would you happen to still have the wine shop right next door to where you are?
Oh, we miss it very, very much, Norm. But unfortunately, we had to close it 4 years ago when most of the other VQA wine shops in British Columbia changed. There were some changes in the operating environment at that time.
Right.
But we still interpret wine, Norm. We still talk about wine. We're still interested in wine. We're just not selling wine.
Well, we're all interested in wine, Linda.
Aren't we? I am.
Yes.
More so lately.
Thank you. Rosemary Thompson, the Okanagan Symphony Orchestra and Opera Kelowna, please.
Hi, Norm. Thank you for moderating. Thank you, Ellen, and to KCR for having this forum and this town hall. I'm really thrilled to represent the performing professional arts groups, and as Norm said, I'm the music director of the Okanagan Symphony Orchestra, the OSO, as well as the interim artistic director of Opera Kelowna. And I also would like to represent Ballet Kelowna today, Simone Orlando, their artistic director and CEO, and also New Vintage Theatre with Bonnie Gratz at the head of that company. Trudeau recently said we need our artists to continue to make us dream, particularly in dark times. And the impact of having these local professional performing organizations, arts organizations, Ballet Kelowna, New Vintage Theatre, Opera Kelowna, and the OSO, can be measured both in tangible and intangible ways. So the tangible part is not the part I generally oversee, but we really are an economic driver, and I appreciate Ellen giving the whole global Canadian perspective. In our local community, roughly 80% of our budgets, which is about $2.5 million of the 4 organizations, go to paying our people. And the vast majority of those people live and spend their money locally. So there's some economic driving happening there. And in addition, surrounding our events, our local businesses like our community theater spaces, office and studio rentals, restaurants and taxis, among others, also receive that greater benefit economically. We also bring a lot of provincial and federal funds into our local community, which also is part of that economic. Now, I'd like to speak about the intangible benefits, the ones that are harder to measure. This is mostly centered around our main stage events that all 4 of our organizations, as well as many other arts organizations here do. And people gather to be reminded that we all share humanity. We need that in our world more than ever, to be inspired and transformed through the direct contact with art and with artists. And this is happening through our performing arts organizations that give us music, dance, theater, and opera. So we can experience storytelling through these mediums and museums that take us to extreme places of joy, of grief, of curiosity, of triumph, and any other possible feeling that human beings were designed to feel, and probably some new ones we can discover. The great Canadian actor Colm Feore said recently, "Our art is ephemeral." Speaking of acting, it exists because you are there to see it, to hear it, and to experience it with us, to share in our humanity. So coming into a post-COVID world is quite challenging. Beyond our main stage experiences, which all 4 of these companies produce, we also work hard to deliver other engagement opportunities throughout our community for all ages that really reflect the community and help to create a sense of belonging. All of our organizations offer high-quality experiential learning opportunities in our individual art forms that invite you to grow with us through classes, youth programs, senior programs, special events, and performances that happen in unexpected places, like putting our guest artist taiko drummers up on the top of Knox Mountain. We also want to bring the art to you. And if you check out New Vintage's KFX Festival, our own kind of Comic-Con here, Ballet Kelowna's In Motion classes, Opera Kelowna's Opera Under the Stars at the UBC campus, and the Okanagan Symphony Orchestra Symphony Storytime for toddlers, and our big youth orchestra program, the OSYO. We're all working to create diversity, celebrate diversity, and create accessibility to everyone, to help them feel like they belong. In other words, to help to create community. We all exist because of our artists, because we give them a platform to share the 10,000 hours of investment and expertise they have. In our post-COVID world, we are all mustering to pivot, but we are reeling. If you consider how many times you have gone online to find a piece of art that's going to bring you solace in this time, we hope that you will continue to think of us. New Vintage has a great theater piece they've just put online. Ballet Kelowna has a new choreographic project online and new remote classes. The Okanagan Symphony has produced From Our House to Yours, a series of online videos from individual musicians' homes. And Opera Kelowna's Sidewalk Serenades, which has singers going to the sidewalk and singing on all sides of the building for our seniors and most vulnerable populations who are really suffering from the isolation. The impact on our organizations of post-COVID world are potentially dire. We are still trying to pivot and figure out what that means for us. We urge you as our community, our individuals, corporations, foundations, governments, to consider with us the crucial role that your performing arts organizations and artists can bring to enriching our communities, making them wonderful places to live. We need local companies to meet your local needs. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Rosemary, and thank you for being a great leader in our community as well. So, Shauna Taylor, before you give us your brief, just want to remind everyone that's watching, if you're watching through Zoom, you can submit a question to any of the panelists or all the panelists via the Q&A feature in Zoom. If you're watching via Facebook, put a little comment in there with a question, and we'll transcribe it to the Q&A of Zoom, and we'll be able to ask it. So, Shauna, thank you for waiting for a moment. Over to you.
Thank you. Yes, so I'm the Executive Director of Pacific Sport Okanagan. I'm our not-for-profit regional sports society sport leader. We're a multi-sport society, and so we try to weave together all of the mandates and mission and hopefully provide support to hundreds, over, I would say, 200 plus local sport organizations, recreation, exercise organizations in the Central Okanagan, though we do extend all the way from Enderby to Osoyoos. So our entire mandate is all across the Okanagan Valley. Sport, much like the arts, is a pastime. It's more than a vocation, it's a passion, and we're used to bringing people together, sometimes in masses, Our competitions have been dramatically affected, of course, and of course we think right away of huge, large-scale competitions like the Olympic and Paralympic Games that have never been rescheduled other than in war times. And so bringing that down to the local level, the winter sports feel that they're fortunate because just finishing their season was when this COVID-19 era hit. And so they are still bracing themselves and very unsure as to what the fall will bring as their training begins. As for our summer sports and organizations like ours, someone mentioned earlier that camps might be dramatically affected, and that has indeed affected our organization and many sport organizations and recreational organizations that have had to pivot, much like has been mentioned already by the other speakers, to online content, focusing on things like training and technical development, things that can be done more easily and to reach mass amount of people, but through a digital medium, which again, someone also mentioned, it's not their favorite way to reach others, but it's been something that we've had to be quite creative in doing to be able to weave all our organizations together. I've heard a lot. I'm also the chair of the Canadian Sports Psychology Association, so we're charged with the mental health of athletes, but of a wide variety of performers. And we know the importance of connection and of exercise and of being out in nature and moving and competing and training. And so it has certainly taken a toll, not just financially, but from a mental health perspective. We're doing the best that we can to use alternative media like online opportunities to link athletes, coaches, organizations, recreation together. But there are some things that we simply cannot recreate. And so much like Rosemary touched on, we can't recreate mass events that have had to be canceled. It's a huge part of our lifeblood. Our revenue generating programs where folks congregate together in numbers have been suspended. Some of them are fortunate. So sports such as golf and tennis have been able to continue and get back in that phase 2 BC restart plan because by their very nature, they are physically distanced. But for organizations or sports that by their very design have a lot of close proximity training and contact, we've really struggled, but we are very resilient and hopeful that we will find a way to come up with alternatives throughout the summer into the fall. And I'd be happy to answer some questions on what some of those brainstorms might look like. So that's a snapshot of our sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Shauna. It's obvious that some parts of your sector are impacted a little differently than others, and heart goes out to all those that are most greatly impacted. Dan Rogers, Executive Director of the Kelowna Chamber of Commerce. Would you like to give us a little intro, please?
Sure, thanks, Norm, and thanks to Helen and KCR for also putting this together. What I thought I'd do just for opening remarks, I'll touch on 3 things. One, I'll give you a little bit of my background and my past involvement on a variety of levels with various nonprofits from different sectors. Talk a bit about how we're being impacted as a Chamber of Commerce. Some are aware we're a federally incorporated nonprofit, but I have lots of colleagues I deal with on a daily basis. Most of them are small nonprofit organizations that work in very numerous small towns throughout British Columbia that are being impacted. And I'll just wrap up on the 3rd component with some observations that we're seeing and having some discussions around dealing with COVID-19. First, on the background, I've been with the Kelowna Chamber as Executive Director for the past 3 years. In fact, I think my anniversary, I haven't heard from my president. Where's my board members? Oh, right, Ellen. My anniversary was yesterday, so 3 years on the board. So pandemic, leadership change, yeah, it's always fun. Previous to that, I was the General Manager or Executive Director for the Greater Vernon Chamber of Commerce. Previous to that, I was in Northern BC. I've spent most of my 30 years, professional years, working, when I reflect on it, with various nonprofits, including a Crown Corporation. Norm's aware, I was previously in local government for about 15 years as an elected representative, but I'm fully recovered. I'm a fully recovered politician, I like to say. In other words, my wife says, never again. You will never run for public office again. So I've got that out of my blood, but I get my feel of politics working with the chamber. But I've worked for a sports organization, a junior hockey team, was on their board. They operate in Northern BC as a nonprofit entity, and the BC Hockey League was proud to work with them. I've worked with social organizations on boards in the past, so I have a pretty good sense. And the Chamber of Commerce, we have a little over 100 members of our chamber. We have 1,000 members. 100 plus are nonprofit organizations, and the scope of their operations pretty diverse, from small volunteer nonprofits that go out and raise a little bit of money to really almost commercial entities. So as far as the chamber, we're one of the larger chambers in BC at over 1,000 members. We have a modest budget of just over $1 million. And we're probably the largest one certainly in the region, but we work very closely with chambers, a number of them very small, from Lake Country to Enderby to Lumbee, and all the way through the Okanagan Valley, and they're all facing significant challenges, as we are. We operate under the federal legislation. They operate, some of them, under BC Societies Act. So the structure is similar. Some operate on government funding that is questioned. In the model in small towns is they still deliver some economic development and tourism. We don't. We've evolved. We used to be Tourism Kelowna, but we gave birth to Tourism Kelowna, and now it's its own entity. And frankly, the child is now bigger than the parent. So we don't deliver that. We rely on our colleagues from tourism, but many small chambers rely on that. And we're hearing from them in our discussions. I feel confident enough to speak because I'm on the BC Chamber Executives Board, so I talk with my colleagues on a regular basis. Many of them are having a tough time, as I suspect you would be aware, just keeping the lights on. Certainly one of mine is a community leader in a major center. We're doing what we can to help the smaller communities, because it will be the smaller communities and the smaller entities that will have the greatest challenge in weathering this storm. And that's a bit of the observation that I'll leave you with. This is a massive change management challenge. And as many aware that have joined us, people react to change differently. Some, and I would suspect most on this call, because I can't sing, I can't dance, I can't draw. My brother's an actor and he's a wonderful artist, but I often tell him I'm a creative thinker. And I think we need to be creative. We need to be open to new ideas and new ways of doing things. And I think we can learn a lot from the arts community about how to do that and how to be creative in our thinking that will help us get through this. And the other piece of it is just reinforced. We're part of a provincial and a national network. We're focused on helping small businesses and small organizations, but fundamental to our DNA is collaboration. And that is being tested now more than ever, and we need to find ways to weather the storm together. And that part of that is being creative, part of it is being innovative, and part of it is going to what we know, and that's collaborating and helping out and looking at new ways of doing business, because what happens afterwards will not be the same as even where we are today. And that means there are going to be some difficult discussions that need to be had. But if we want to survive collectively as nonprofits and all the value, not just the tangible economic benefits of the nonprofit sector, but the intangible benefits. I mean, I tell my children, if you want to learn and grow, volunteer for a nonprofit, and you will grow exponentially, and it'll do some great work in the community. So I want to thank everybody that's joined us here, and the work of all the attendees as well, for what they contribute to the social and the greater good for Kelowna and the region. So that's it.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for the advice too for everyone. If they want to grow, join a nonprofit and help out, especially in these times. I'm sure nonprofits would appreciate it. Sharon Peterson, CEO of RY, would you mind introducing yourself and your organization, please?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you, Ellen, for inviting me to participate in this. I feel very privileged to be here with these esteemed colleagues. And thank you, Norm, for moderating. The YMCA closed our 3 YMCA community centers, H2O, Kelowna Family Y, and the Downtown Y on March 15th. And that resulted in the layoff of 243 full and part-time staff. It was one of the saddest days of my career. We're only just now bringing some staff back, and certainly not all, to help us with our phase 1 reopening plans. Since we've closed these centers, we have continued to offer YMCA childcare to essential services workers, and have adapted our mental wellness, employment, and child development programs to a virtual platform. And I have to say, like my colleagues, I at this point in my career, I had no idea how many virtual platforms there were, and certainly I have appreciated the ability that those give to us to still serve people. In order to keep our 16,000 YMCA Health, Fitness, Aquatics members whose memberships were automatically put on hold engaged, to list a few things, we're offering free online live and virtual fitness classes and mental health programming for all ages. We launched an online early years community for families that provides daily story time, arts and crafts, and active play. We even have Mailman Ted, who actually the kids can send their pictures, and Mailman Ted delivers them to the house of one of our staff, and she posts them behind her, almost like, I don't know, I think there was a kids program way back again, almost like that romper room, I think, where there was a mirror and she called out kids. So it was really cool. And we've had staff checking on our senior members, a lot of them with chronic health issues, regularly to see how they're doing. I can say that COVID-19 has clearly shown us that we have an incredibly caring and generous community. Many of our annual donors reached out to us right at the very beginning to see how they could help, and many have increased their gifts. We've had tablets donated to youth in our employment programs so that they could participate in the virtual offerings, because when you are delivering those kinds of programs, you may have a computer, but the people who are delivering to may not. Over 200 of our members kept their monthly membership fees going so that we can build up a financial assistance fund to help more families across our community access the Y when we reopen our doors. We know there are many, many families that who never would have dreamt that they would be affected financially. And I know that they're going to need help when they come back. We plan to reopen the Kelowna Family Y, H2O, and Downtown YMCA in phases, beginning with dryland programs later this month. I have to say that closing was so much easier than reopening. Getting facilities ready is fairly straightforward, but planning for reduced capacity and social distancing is proving so complicated. I sometimes wonder if we're overthinking it, but then again, we have extremely high standards when it comes to health and safety, and we want to make sure that we can provide a quality experience for everyone. As for the lasting impact of COVID-19, I believe that this period of self-isolation has had a significant negative impact on people's health, as was mentioned, both physically and mentally. I know that it certainly has had a negative impact on mine. A sense of community and belonging is such an important aspect to well-being, and I think that we need to try and get that back as soon as possible, and we want our organization to be part of that. Thank you.
And so do all of us want you to get back up and running, I'm sure. And last but not least, we have Kirstine McCullough. And Kirstine is with Arts Co. Would you mind giving us a little bit of yourself, please?
Thanks, Norm. Thanks, everyone. Arts Co is the Arts Council of the Central Okanagan. I'm the executive director. And as compared to some of the other organizations on the call, we are a nonprofit, but we are small, but we do have a big voice and an excellent platform to support the creative sector. And that includes our foundation, which is in the visual arts, but we also partner with the creative sectors and with professional organizations as well. So our role in the community is to really be a connector and to create economic opportunities for our members who are artists. And those include exhibition opportunities. And as you can imagine, with COVID and the public spaces in which we typically host exhibitions, host events, either have been closed or in the stages of soft reopening. So our challenge is to shift to a digital strategy. And as with many of the arts organizations, that's not our natural place to be. So we are advocating for more volunteers to help us. And we're really thinking about our strategy to ensure that we support our artists in an effective way. And what that means is artists are looking for opportunities to monetize their work, so to sell their work. And although it's an excellent opportunity to show things online and demonstrate your abilities and what you can produce, we're also looking to support the creative sector and the creative economy as well. So we're going through a period of significant change. Rosemary touched on it. It's from a funding perspective, incredibly challenging, but one of the benefits of being small is that, when it comes to weathering storms, sometimes a smaller organization, because we have less to lose, maybe a silver lining for us in this situation is more to gain, meaning broadening our audience and broadening our membership. So I want to thank you for this opportunity, Norm, and to everyone, and really look forward to the conversation.
Well, thank you, Christine. And you know what? It's art is integral to all of our lives. I think everyone that's watching, as well as those that from your organizations, if we didn't have arts and culture, and you too, Dan, if we didn't have, that was a joke, Dan, by the way. If we didn't have arts and culture, and Dan, I don't know how our lives would be as rich as they are here in the Okanagan anyway, and around the world for sure. So with that, what I would ask you to do is take your mics off mute. So this way you don't have to look to take your mic off mute when the time comes. I'm going to fire some questions at you, and congratulations on, first of all, keeping to relatively concise introductions. We've got 30 minutes left for Q&A, so that's awesome. And I would also invite, again, anybody that's participating via Zoom. There's 34 participants. If you would like to submit a question through the Q&A box, not the chat box, through Q&A, I'd be happy to ask the question, assuming it's appropriate. We do have some questions that were sent in ahead of time, so we'll go through those. If you're watching via Facebook and you're live, please put a comment on there with the question, and we'll have that transcribed to me, and I'll be able to ask it. And if you're watching via Castanet, it's not too late. Go to Facebook or go to Zoom, and go to Facebook. We'll send you the link. You can get on Zoom, all kinds of ways. However, if it's after 5 o'clock on Thursday, then you're hooked because you're watching a rerun and you can't ask the question. But I'm sure one of our panelists would be happy to take your question if you email them directly at their organizations. So first question is for the Chamber. Look at that, Dan. I make a joke about you and you get a question, extra advertising. What initiatives are the Chamber undertaking to support nonprofit part of their membership? The nonprofit part of their membership. Go for it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Great question, and thanks again. And I'll try to keep it short. As a former broadcaster and politician, it's difficult, but Norm, I'll take your lead and try to be as tight as possible. We have, as mentioned, we've got over 100 nonprofits, but the scale of how they operate is pretty diverse. And I'm conscious, even those that have joined us today, we have some nonprofit entities in the Kelowna area that are bigger than many of my small businesses. And the line that we have is everyone needs to operate business-like. So we provide resources to help. Our nonprofits pay, because for the most part, they're small entities and they do great work, so we have a discount pricing. We have a number of programs that we're focused on. One of those, interesting enough, we're trying to adjust is providing advice to help them through this. And that includes up to, what's your safety plan look like? So we've got templates available. We've got a resource page that we've developed with our colleagues around the Chamber just to get additional information out. We're pleased to have, I know everybody's doing webinars and Zoom meetings, but we were fortunate to have reps from WorkSafe BC on a couple weeks ago. We're going to get them back again, and we'll work through the various organizations so that those managers can talk. So how's your safety plan going? Where are the areas that you need to focus on? So as a resource, we're there to help. We just actually had a webinar last week with representatives from BDO from across the province that are focused on the nonprofit sector, particularly to help them understand where they could access funding specifically, where the government programs are that exist, giving them some tips of how to manage, whether it's the financial resources. So we were planning a governance training that we do. We're now having to shift. That was to be delivered in person. We're now back with that person that we had contracted to seeing if we can develop and flip a curriculum for an online delivery. But that's one of the ways we make that available to our members. Governance training, it's always really productive, and we've been doing that for a number of years to help our nonprofits. We have a building, interestingly enough, right downtown on Harvey Half of, well, 3/4 of it now is empty. So we're going through, do we need that same space? We have a big boardroom that we used to make available to all our nonprofits at any time if they wanted to meet. We're shifting that now because we can't use that, nor just even within our safety plan are we at that stage to do that. But we do have a platform. We have 3 Zoom accounts. We've made that available. Any nonprofit, if you want a place to meet and don't want to invest in Zoom and want to go longer than 45 minutes with the free account, come let us know, and we'll be a platform and we'll help facilitate some of that. So just a few ways that we're helping our nonprofit members.
What about services like insurance programs, payroll, other things, nuts and bolts? Do you offer those to your members?
Yeah, I mean, that's fundamental to what chambers do. I mean, you'll hear different things, but fundamentally we provide advocacy, we provide benefits that reduce your bottom line, and we allow connections to occur, so that networking. So under benefits, it's applicable to all our members. Extended healthcare benefits. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of nonprofits come to us, because if you're a single entity, a single person, an executive director that runs the whole thing, our chamber group insurance is like a co-op. We can provide coverage, extended healthcare benefits, and that's, I think, why you see some nonprofits going to and joining chambers because of that specifically. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Question that was sent in ahead of time. What software do you use for virtual AGMs, and how do you count votes? Anybody want to tackle that one?
I will. We just had ours. We had ours in April. The YMCA had virtual AGM. It was, I think I cried through the whole thing because, to be quite honest, it was, only 3 weeks after we had closed. I'm a crier anyway. But anyways, so we used Zoom actually and Facebook. So Facebook was to get questions, but Zoom was actually, you could be live, you could vote, all that kind of thing. And there was a moderator, just like I know KCR has Dorothy. We had one as well who was fantastic and kept us all online, all on the on the same page and rolling it really well about movers and seconders and all that kind of thing. But Zoom was the go-to. It really did a really great job for us.
And counting the votes, you mentioned that.
Yeah, well, and people could. There was actually almost like if you were to do a if you were in a meeting somewhere and you all had your phones and you were told to vote now, it was like that, and then it would come up and it would show the for and against and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, cool. Anybody else have something to add? All right.
It hasn't hit us yet because none of our organizations have had their AGM in this time.
So
the Kelowna Art Gallery recently had their AGM, and they had some technical glitches, but it was a success. Yeah. And we're preparing for our very first Zoom AGM at the end of the month.
So the provincial association, Norm, that I belong to, the BC Chamber Executives, we just held ours using Zoom and another platform. It's out of the US though, it's called Slido. And it's really good for, we use it quite often for our Q&A functions at our events when we hold luncheons, if we get back to that. So that worked really well. Our AGM, we're planning on July 9th, but I think we're going to join tourism's AGM just to see how well they do. Zoom, Facebook, there are some glitches that occur, but if you plan well enough in advance, and frankly, it's the quorum and credentials of those, you have to have a process to evaluate those that are joining us so that when you get to voting, that you actually have the members there. So we're working through that. We use another software called Election Buddy. That's how we do our online voting. We're also looking at that for our ballot casting. But even with Zoom, you can use the polls. You just have to make sure the people that are in are the people that are your members. So there's always some pitfalls along the way.
Election Buddy, I kind of like the sound of that. So, the current pandemic is not only hurting nonprofits, it's hurting for-profits, of course, as well. In particular, the traditional media, radio, newspapers, TVs. In the past, under the old normal, you would have asked media for some free advertising, I'm sure, and sometimes you get it and sometimes you wouldn't. Have you had the pleasure of getting any help from the struggling media folks during the pandemic? Did you want to give out a shout out to anybody in particular?
Well, I would say that for the most part, Norm, we don't have any much content that we can sell tickets to at this point in the performing arts. You know, I've certainly been supported through Phil Johnson is a huge supporter of the arts in Kelowna, and I know that the CBC also shares some, and the Daily Courier, the Kelowna Daily Courier, also has been providing some platform for us. In terms of advertising, it's not really an issue in the given moment because we are still all pivoting to figure out how we're going to share our content. But just in terms of an awareness of the arts, they've been very supportive.
Looking for volunteers?
I would agree that that the media has been very supportive, and I you know what, it's funny, it never even occurred to me that, of course, with no one doing advertising, that would be very painful. And you know, it's funny because you're focused on your own problems, but we've been very fortunate. Even when we do paid marketing, we get a lot of exposure in addition to that. So we have a great relationship, and Phil, as you mentioned, is very supportive, and he had us on, you know, talking about what's happening in our organizations, and Kelowna Now, and so many organizations, so many media are really taking any press releases that we've got and putting them out there. So they've been very, very helpful.
So here's thank you. Here's another question submitted before. What is the best way to contribute to the community and NPOs? Send a check, MasterCard, volunteer.
I mean, I think all of those things that you just said, but I think part of what we're dealing with right now is the great unknown. So we have built over years and decades in some cases, trust with the community and relationships that we know we can count on. And I must say that we continue to have those relationships. We've had some incredible generosity from sponsors and donors. I think that if people could ask themselves right now, how could they give a little bit every month to kind of create some stability for the organization, so we have a known, that can be really helpful. To when we are able to figure out, and some already are offering online content that can have a paid component, to please consider doing that to support your local organizations, as opposed to just getting all the free stuff that you can get from all over the world, because we want to be able to survive this crisis. So when we're able to get back and doing everything in a live way, and maybe an online way as well, we're still here. We want to be able to support our artists. That's a huge part of our performing arts organizations, is how do we keep our artists going through this time? And so the more you can support the organizations, the more that we can do that and keep them dancing and acting and playing and singing.
Okay, thank you, Rosemary.
And I think sorry, Linda, go ahead.
If I may just add to that, Rose's comments, you know, sometimes we find ourselves wondering, what would it look like if arts and culture were recognized as essential services? Because they are. And there's more and more data coming out that our mental health and well-being is really tied to access to the arts, museums and galleries, performing arts. These are essential to our well-being, as well as individuals, as well as our civic imagination. So how can individuals help? Along with the excellent suggestions that Rose shared, here's some other things. Be curious about what your local organizations are offering virtually. There's a lot of new stuff coming out every week. Probably there's new stuff. Don't assume it's not there. Be curious and go looking for it. It may not automatically show up in your feeds. This is maybe the time to make those a part of your feeds, and sign up for newsletters or collect to the social media of the arts and culture organizations, so you know what's going on. You know, it wasn't very long ago that arts and culture organizations across North America were asking themselves, how do we compete with the couch? Because the propensity to stay at home has increased 30% in the last 19 years. And that is, the couch has become the biggest competition to arts and culture. Well, I think we've met our moment where we've had enough of the couch. And while there's been beautiful creativity of bringing the art to you on your couch, which is fabulous, I think there's a pent-up demand now. People do want to get off their couch. That's great. So I would say, don't resist that urge. You know, change your sweatpants for your real pants, and get out there. And as doors start to open and events start to happen, be there and be a part of rediscovering the amazing arts and culture that is in Kelowna. Kelowna has amazing arts and culture, and of course recreation and sports as well. What an amazing lifestyle together we offer. It's a big part of the Kelowna lifestyle and the Okanagan lifestyle. So get out there and be curious and engage and go.
Speaking of couches, Kirsten,
Leave
you
the
wanted
couch.
to,
I was going to say, I've embraced the couch, actually. So actually part of our online content is hosting sessions on the couch, which are interviews that have been highly successful. But what we're looking to do with our digital strategy, and to build what both Rosemary and Linda are saying, is we're looking to create content that piques that curiosity in the Okanagan. So for example, we're looking to do a retrospective of 50 years in the Okanagan of arts and culture, and how arts councils have formed and what they've meant to the Okanagan, and how very grassroots organizations like ourselves have actually built up into communities where we can host the orchestras, the symphonies, the ballet, the museums that we have as well. So I think creating and really curating content that's meaningful to our constituents and visitors alike, I think is really meaningful at this point in time as well. So we're taking that to heart as part of our digital strategy as well.
I can tell you from my nonprofit organization, which shall remain nameless, the amount of donations have basically dwindled completely for any asks. So we don't ask anymore. But the regular donations, Rosemary, you know, the ones we got people to sign up for on a regular monthly basis, those for the most part have continued strong through the last few months. And, you know, so as one nonprofit to all of you, if you haven't embraced that, and I'd be surprised if you haven't, looking for that regular contributor, then that's something you might want to consider. What's your experience been with that?
Yeah, we've had some great retention in our donors. And also, you know, we had to cancel at the Symphony. We canceled 2 concerts for which we had already sold many, many tickets. And I know that the ballet has had the same experience. And so many of those ticket buyers chose to just receive a tax receipt and make their ticket revenue into a donation for us, which we're incredibly grateful. And it is about thinking about investing in the arts as opposed to supporting the arts. I think it just has a little bit of a different mind shift. You're investing in your own community, even if you're investing in an arts or recreational thing that you don't personally benefit from, participate in. It's about benefiting the whole community, and that's that keeping our local artists and all our programs available for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of collaboration have you been able to achieve through this? Besides working together today on this town hall, virtual town hall, do you have opportunities outside of this to work together to help each other, support each other, make sure that at the end of the day you all come out successful and ready to take on the new normal?
Sorry, go ahead, Shauna.
Sure. I just wanted to give a few quick examples. I was just thinking about that. We've really decided that at this point, because we're facing in sport and recreation a lot of the same barriers that the arts and performing arts are experiencing, we wanted to look at some of the partners that we've always wanted to reach out to, wanted to do something meaningful that we knew would probably be in the same boat that we were in. And one of the places we wanted to build community with was our Indigenous sport organizations and sport for persons with disabilities. So we reached out and we've just started to create, like everybody else, it's the theme of the day, the online content, but also meaningful in kind and potentially revenue generating programs that we honestly were on the side of our desk. We're so important to our mission, but we felt so overwhelmed by the daily grind that we were unable to sort of access that creative bend for all of these folks that were right there ready to join us. So we've decided to think creatively about who has been there on the outskirts that we've started those partnerships with, but we're going to use this pause to do something meaningful with it. And so I would challenge anybody out there to be thinking about who is that partner, who are those organizations that might share in your mission that you've always wished you could reach out to, and do so. Odds are probably pretty high they're going to say, what are you up to? Because we're all on the couch right now. So anyway, from us.
I would add to that, Shauna. I think my immediate response to when you asked that question, Norm, is the pause. So we're all a little bit in a pause right now. For most of our performing arts organizations, our planning cycle is about 2 years out. So we're having to really pivot, and we're just at the stage now where we're trying to we probably have, scenario A, scenario B, scenario C, depending on all the regulations that come out and the protocols and the recommendations. So we're having conversations at this point, but we are not there yet where we can put a brand new program or collaborative program right in place. We are used to collaborating with organizations, and we will certainly continue to do so, but we don't have anything concrete yet because we're still trying to figure out the big question mark of what we do now.
Go ahead, Sharon.
I have a great example. When the school district was wanting to serve essential service workers' children by offering in classroom instruction, they reached out to all the organizations that work within the schools providing before and after school care programming. And we came together. There were 3 organizations that they were partnered with, and we came together and we decided that we were going to make sure that we could serve as many people as possible, but we wanted to just break down the barriers of perceived competition, I guess, and we were serving the entire community by collaborating, but also making sure that we were on the same page in terms of how we were going to do it. So and in the past, I think we've had relationships and we do collaborate in a small way, but this was literally to serve families, and we all wanted to do it the same way, and that was, it was really an amazing collaboration.
Thank you. Kirstine, I think you had your hand up there.
Oh, yes, thanks, Norm. I was just going to add on in collaboration with the City of Kelowna Cultural Services, Arts Co hosts quarterly roundtables with all the organized arts and cultural societies across the Central Okanagan. And we've in fact expanded to both Vernon and Penticton to bring the arts councils in as well. So typically we meet quarterly, but because of the pandemic and just the fact that all of our organizations are so drastically affected, along with the sports organizations, we've actually pivoted to a monthly meeting. It's a Zoom call. They're highly effective. We have 20 plus attendees at each of the calls. And the intent is to share where we're at, share information. ArtsGo hosts information on our website as well for all of the arts and creative sectors. So www.artsgo.ca. But also we talk about things about in the reopening phase 2, what does that mean to the downtown core, for example, to each of our organizations, and how can we collaborate to ensure that we support each other and support our community and make sure that we're following the guidelines as they're laid out and as we adapt to them as well. So they're highly effective, and I really want to thank the City of Kelowna for hosting those events as well.
Speaking of guidelines, where is the nonprofit community, the arts and culture and sports community, getting their information for those guidelines? Are you watching Bonnie Henry every day at 3 o'clock?
Yes.
Are you going to WorkSafe BC? Are you calling your MLA? Where are you getting your information from?
All of those.
All.
All of the above.
One of the things.
It depends.
Yeah,
Just
one of
keep
the things
asking
we
until you get the right answer, right? You just keep asking until you get the answer you want. Is the BC Arts Council continuing to provide money to the organizations as it was before, even though you don't have a ticketed event? For example, Rosemary, if they provided you money to hold a concert down in Penticton for First Nations or something, something special,
So,
would they give you the money anyway, even though you're not doing it?
Well, BC Arts Council funds in a few different ways on operating. Some of us are on operating and some of us are on project, and you can't always access both. So I can only speak to the operating. Well, the symphony is on operating, and so we're enormously grateful to the BC Arts Council. They've pivoted so quickly with us. They've extended deadlines for grant applications. They actually didn't even require this year's operations grant. They just gave everybody what they got the year before, because we were all reeling about how we could put that in, because it was due at the end of March. And they also gave an immediate resiliency payment to anyone that was on operating or who had received a provincial project grant in the last 3 years. So that, that shows the support that we have from them. And I know across the country, some of the provincial arts grants have been pulled completely, not just an extra resiliency payment. So we're very grateful. We're in touch often with our officers at the program, and we are going to be looking to government support to weather this storm as we figure out who we are going to be as we come through this. And I know all the arts organizations across the country are all the calls that I'm on are looking to that kind of support as well.
Are getting any indication from any government that they plan to open up the purse strings a little more than they have already?
I know that there's certainly talk about some of the programs that exist. We were filling out surveys to see if those existing programs have been helping our organizations, and if not, how they can pivot to help us. And it takes time, right, to figure out what's going to work for whom. Certainly some of our artists have made use of the CERB agreement for sure. And we absolutely get the feeling, I don't know that we have all confirmation, that our regular operating grants will continue. They're not going to be contingent on not being able to do what we said we were going to do before COVID hit. So we're grateful for that too.
Anybody else? Yes, Dan?
I would just add, like many organizations, nonprofits do qualify for some of the federal programs. We've certainly pursued the wage subsidy, and we've had some positive response on that. The CEBA, the loan program, is available. It's forgivable. It makes a lot of sense for small business, but nonprofits are eligible for that. 25% of that is forgivable. It's interest-free. It's $40,000. It helps in bridge financing. It helps small businesses, but it can help organizations, nonprofits as well. So the federal government has, and certainly the Prime Minister has made mention to it, that he understands there's this need. And some of these programs, they've been introduced and then adjusted, and they've been adjusted so that they can be applicable for many of the nonprofits that exist out there.
Yes, go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, just to add to that, other federal programs in our sector, well, like many businesses, we've been able to access the Canadian Emergency Wage Supplement, and that's been a huge help in terms of the loss of contributed revenue that we had been anticipating to balance our budget. And Canadian Heritage is putting together a new grant program, though the details haven't been released. And in terms of the summer wage subsidy programs for students, they've been extremely flexible in terms of allowing us to pivot job descriptions and roles to meet the new realities that we are welcoming the students in. And we are just starting 5 summer students at the museums all this week. We're very excited to see them back. And then finally, the City of Kelowna for Kelowna Museums, that's 46% of our operating budget. We're tremendously grateful for that support, and so far it's still there, and we have our fingers crossed that will continue.
So we still have a couple of minutes left, and I'd like to end on a high note. So before we go to the high note, here's a challenging note. I'm looking around the room, and I think most of you will be able to reopen, if you're not already open, at some point during phase 3, prior to the vaccine. However, I look down at Rosemary, and it's going to be tough, right? You have been told by Dr. Henry, basically until there's a vaccine or some kind of herd immunity, which we probably won't get here because we are doing so well of keeping the numbers down. But that's the reality. Until there's a vaccine, which she's optimistic, she says, a year or so, we're not going to be able to have these large gatherings. which of course, the ticket sales that your organizations rely on do. And then Shauna, I know you talked about the winter sports scene. People are uncertain what's going to happen there. But I would suspect that most of the athletes in some of the sports venues will still be able to get out and separate themselves, right? So you still might have an opportunity there. So I guess my question is, what happens to you? Can you survive a year the way it is now? Tell the audience, tell the people who are listening, can you survive? Will you still be here a year from now when the vaccine hopefully comes up?
Can I go first? I mean, the organizations that I'm representing today, specifically the two that I work for and the other two, we, as you said, rely so much on ticket revenue. It's at least 50% of our earned revenue, of our revenue completely. And when Premier Hogan announced the phases, I heard from various people before I had seen it, oh, they said Symphony can reopen, fantastic. And I said, but there's still the 50 people maximum. So we are trying to pivot. We are all really diving into our cash flow, to our finances, to taking care of our artists, to trying to provide something with our community that will allow us to be within those 50 people. And we don't know yet. Every time I talk to my colleagues, we are all, on plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and we're probably going to do it in modules. We're going to do it in looking at venues. There's so much uncertainty that this sector has never faced before. So the answer to your question, will we still be here? We will fight to still be here because we believe in what we're doing, and we hope that everybody will believe as much as we are, that will stay with us, that will help us through this time, but mostly will come back to us once we're back in the theater again. And we can't wait for that day to happen.
I don't think any of us can wait either. Any final positive words that people want to give? Now's the chance. All right, in that case, I will give a positive word. You and your organizations are so integral to quality of life for us in the Central Okanagan and everywhere else that people are listening to this. Thank you so much for the work that you do. Thank you to all your organizations, the teams that support you. Obviously, you're the leaders, but there's groups of people that are supporting you. Thank you to all the patrons that have been supporting you and will continue to support you through this and after this. And my call out to everyone out there that has ears to listen is open up your checkbooks if you can afford it. Because we can't afford to lose any of these wonderful organizations. Please do what you can. My comment to Mr. Wood that provided some input, but no question, I will pass that on to the panelists. And to all you that submitted questions, hopefully you got your questions asked in a roundabout way. I think we discussed them all. And thank you, of course, to KCR for organizing these roundtables and these virtual town halls. Good night. And
Norm, thank you so much for hosting. We totally appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem, no problem. My
Thank
pleasure.
you for all of you for attending.
Anytime. You can double my salary.
We're going to hold you to that. We'll have another one in a couple of weeks. Norm, we'll talk to you soon about that.
Okay. Bless all of you. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.